The current lieutenant governor wants Danbury Mayor Mark Boughton to be the next one. Ross Garber threw his hat into the AG race late, but he's running quickly for it now. And good news for a Long Island Indian tribe could be bad news for Connecticut casinos. Hi, you're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. Mark Boughton is a 5-term Republican mayor in Danbury. He's also a 2-term state lawmaker who's made headlines, and I think he would say headway, in one of Connecticut's most successful urban centers. After a run at the governor's seat, he's now the running mate, for Lieutenant Governor Michael Fedeli. Thank you very much, Mark, for being here. If we could start off with just talking about some candidates say that in the interest of cost savings, they would even eliminate the whole lieutenant governor position. I mean, talk to us about the role that you anticipate that you would play. Well,
you know, I've heard people say that, and I think it's kind of silly. From a practical matter, you're always going to need somebody that will be in charge of the state once the governor should leave the borders of Connecticut. And it requires a constitutional amendment. You can't just eliminate the position. So the question is, how do you make the position more viable, and how do you make it more meaningful?
Right.
And I've talked certainly to Lieutenant Governor Fedeli as well as the other candidates, and all of them agree that Lieutenant Governor position is going to have to play a prominent role in all of the various administrations, mainly because the problems are so big. They're so vast that no one person can actually solve those problems. So it's going to take a two-person approach, a teamed approach, if you will. Well, certain parts of the government will have to be carved out and worked on, while the operations and management of the government will also continue as well. So there's certainly an important and large role for Lieutenant Governor to play.
And so it sounds like it would be kind of carving out a new role, right?
No question that people haven't perceived the office of Lieutenant Governor like that in the past, and certainly it'll be a new way, and certainly a new way of looking at that position. But the fact of the matter is that we have a responsibility, a duty to the taxpayers of the state to ensure that their $110,000 worth of salary goes to something that's worthwhile and meaningful and productive to benefit all the residents of Connecticut.
Why would you want to be involved now? Because whoever's going to get it next, I mean, it's going to be brutal, right? We have this massive deficit. I mean, you're going to get beat up. Yeah. You're going to get torn apart. I mean, you're going to be like the most unpopular guys or women in Connecticut.
I actually was joking with the Fedeli family, saying that we won't be able to have dinner anywhere in Connecticut because of the decisions that are going to have to be made. But look, there's a challenge here, and I specialize in fixing things and reorganizing and putting things back together. And so I really relish this challenge. I think it can be done. We have a great state with great people, and the potential is really limitless. It's all about, though, how do we tap into those resources and get the state moving forward again.
Talk about some of the successes that you have had in Danbury that you think could translate to the state level.
Well, first of all, about 3 weeks ago, we had our bond rating increased while the state of Connecticut bond rating was decreased. So right off the bat, we're much farther ahead. And I've had 8 straight balanced budgets and actually returned a slight surplus to our Treasury. So I know how to manage and operate a large budget. But more importantly...
But let's get to that. So what are you doing differently there in Danbury then?
Well, it's really simple. This isn't rocket science. It's not brain surgery. You don't spend more money than you have, and you don't borrow more money than you can pay back. And unfortunately, the state of Connecticut hasn't lived by those particular rules. So, and going forward, there are other things, too, that we need to do. Spin off our social services into the nonprofit sector, those kinds of things that I've done on a local level that you can do on the state level.
Did you, in those 8 balanced budgets, did you ever raise taxes? Or?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any municipal official in the state that hasn't raised taxes at one time or another, but our taxes have been steady. Our grand list growth has been successful, and it has helped offset tax increases, and we've derived other sources of revenue in terms of our spending to be able to offset the impact on our taxpayers.
So as you look at the state budget as it stands now, I mean, are there areas that you say this is how I would have done it differently here?
There's, you can go through the entire state budget and find spots that you think you can do a better job at. And I'll give you just one quick example is the area of corrections. Roughly for every 500 prisoners that we send out of state for prison, we can save about $10 million. That's just one area that you can look at that there might be some savings. Our Department of Social Services, DCF, those departments are one of the largest line items in our budget. And certainly we'll have to have oversight of those functions, but we can spin those off into the nonprofit sector who can do it more quickly, efficiently, and certainly less expensively than we're doing it now.
You know, I know you fairly well, and you're not a guy who's afraid to take controversial stands. I mean, I'm referring, of course, to your efforts to get state troopers authorized, I guess, to enforce. I did have to go there to enforce immigration. Talk about that decision, why you got involved in it, and where you stand now.
Well, you know, Danbury is one of the few communities in the Northeast that's participating in a program called 287G. Two of our officers have been trained as immigration agents by Immigration Customs and Enforcement, but their job isn't to stop people on the street. We don't do that. Mm-hmm. Their job is when there's an immigration angle, an illegal immigration angle, let me say, related to a crime, then that's where their training will take place, and we'll be able to issue a deportation order on somebody after they've served their sentence in our prison system. And that's really where the value of that program is. It's not in random stops, and certainly not something that we want to live in a community that does that. The net is that we want to provide a safe community. Danbury is the safest city in Connecticut, one of the safest cities in the United States of America, because we're proactive and we take advantage of training like that.
Has that program been fruitful there in Danbury?
Been very successful. We, typically over each week we'll pick up a couple of folks that are engaged in illegal criminal conduct and that will be deported upon their completion of their sentence if they're convicted of the crime.
Is that something that the state could also do? Or?
I think those are policy decisions that are left to the governor, and obviously I'll defer to their decision-making in terms of what they would like to do, and a lot of it will have to depend on the kind of resources you have in terms of deploying that kind of training. But I will tell you that training is of value. It's certainly in a much larger global picture something that ought to be looked at.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about, because whenever you guys come on, we talk a lot about jobs. In what ways do you think that Connecticut is not doing a good job keeping businesses here?
Well, I think we have to be honest and direct with the voters of the state. And the fact of the matter is, for the last 20 years, a Democratic supermajority has made this the most unfriendly place to do business in the United States of America. So we need to roll back a lot of the rules and regulations and statutes and mandates that are put on businesses. We need to repeal the business entity tax. It's a $250 tax designed just to harass small businesses. We got to redirect and refocus on medium-sized and small businesses. That's the largest growth area in terms of bringing more jobs to Connecticut. And we have to stop fixating on recruiting the large super company from somewhere abroad or somewhere in the rest of the country to come to Connecticut. It's not going to happen. But we do have a vast amount of resources here, and we have a vast amount of entrepreneurial spirit that we can tap in, and we don't recognize it, and we ought to be fostering that and growing that.
Talk about your running mate, why you connected with him, and how you guys are going to make a good team.
Well, Mike Fedeli is a compassionate, passionate man about this state. He's intelligent. He's a man of integrity. He understands the challenges that have to be made, but also he understands and has the courage to be able to tackle those challenges. And so we look forward to a very difficult 4 years in office, but one that I think at the end of that time will be rewarding in terms of the state of Connecticut and its impact on its residents.
Do you regret that you're not still in the gubernatorial race?
Look, I have to be straight with you. Do I sometimes sit back and reflect on it and what would have happened if I'd stayed in? Sure. I mean, who doesn't? Yeah. We would have finished the convention with between 20 and 25% of the delegates, potentially more. But I still would have woken up Monday morning and had $3,000 in the bank and not a lot of time to raise the balance of that money in a primary period. And I just didn't think it was feasible or doable. So in that sense, sure, I mean, everybody has regrets. But also, at this point, I'm really excited about this race, and I'm excited about moving the state forward. And this is another way that I can contribute.
I mean, you brought up money. I mean, what role do you think that money is going to play in this campaign? Tom Foley has a lot of money.
Well, elections are not about the size of your wallet. They're about the size of your ideas. They're about what's in your heart. I think the residents of this state are going to recognize that. That's not to suggest that Tom Foley doesn't have good things in his heart. I'm saying as a general, broad sort of observation. So money is important, but it's not the only thing that's important. I think at the end, whoever wins this primary on August 10th will have won it based on ideas and based on merit. And that's really all you can ask for.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Mayor, for joining us. Mayor Mark Boughton, he's running for Lieutenant Governor. Up next, he's a well-known attorney, now running for Attorney General. Ross Garber is going to be here to tell us how he'll depart from the Blumenthal style.